Not long after I was sucker punched in the back of my head, the young Marine who threw that punch was being rushed to the hospital by paramedics fighting to save his life. The damage to his face was so extensive that, according to page 7 of the police report, severe blood loss had led to an imminent threat of death. But up until that bar fight, my winter of 2010 had gone much differently. I had just secured my position as a defensive tackle with the University of North Alabama football program. I was turning over a new leaf in the pursuit of both an athletic career and higher education, leaving behind me the days of shootouts with organized crime, competitive fighting, bouncing, and working as a bodyguard. Or so I thought. I thought I had left behind my old haunts, the clubs I used to work the door at, the little side bouncing gigs all over Sarasota, Florida. But I was wrong. I was home from college for Christmas break, and I decided to hit one of my old hangout spots, the beach club on Siesta Key. So if you had walked into that establishment in late December of that year, you'd have found me drinking a cocktail, surrounded by the absurdity of a large crowd watching the Naughty Santa costume contest, naively thinking I was in control of my evening. The events that unfolded would go on to paint a radically different picture. When I examine occurrences like these in my past, I'm often forced to confront the sheer absurdity of the world I used to inhabit. This video is for educational purposes only. I share these true stories not to glorify violence. In fact, quite the opposite. I've started this video series so that others can learn these same hard lessons without having to make the same mistakes I made. When I examine occurrences like these from my past, I'm often forced to confront the sheer absurdity of the world I used to inhabit. Long before that evening degenerated into an environment showered with broken glass and pooling blood, it began as a simple collision of two volatile subcultures, both highly trained, deeply competitive, and entirely governed by pride. The U.S. Marine Corps excels at training men to dominate a space through a combative mindset, clear communication, and mutual support. But that doctrine failed catastrophically inside the confines of a packed nightclub when confronted with men who had trained for hand-to-hand combat in non-permissive environments. My friends and I were products of the House of Pain, a hole-in-the-wall fight gym in Bradenton, Florida, infamous for its hardcore training tactics implemented by living legend Sensei Mike Hollowball. Sensei Mike is a 7-time world champion kickboxer and a 9th-degree black belt. He was once challenged by Chuck Norris in an exhibition fight and promptly knocked him out. His martial arts career was ended by what I once heard Bill Superfoot Wallace describe as a dirty hit during his fight against Benny the Jet Urquidez. Anyway, I say all this to give an idea of the man who trained us. He didn't train us for a clean, front-facing ring. He trained us for absolute chaos. The House of Pain was the kind of old-school gym that accepted all challengers. It was a small, concrete block building with rubber mat floors, no frills, no air conditioning, no fans. All the doors and windows would be shut tight in the Florida heat while training was in progress. It started with a warm-up and intense cardio, jumping jacks, high knees, ab work, as Sensei Mike would come around and land body shots on his students, headshots if you didn't have your hands up when he came around. Only then would we begin to practice technique, going through, and finally, at the end, sparring. Broken noses, concussions, broken bones of all kinds, in fact. Perforated eardrums, all of that was a common occurrence during a sparring session there at the House of Pain. There were very few who lasted through that kind of intensity, but there were 3 of us who were dedicated students that were at the beach club on that day. Sometimes at the end of a sparring session, we would do what Sensei Mike called barroom brawling. It was every man for himself, forcing one to adapt instinctively to unpredictable threats. This instilled lessons you only learn with experience, like knowing how to get your back to the wall or how to identify allies at a moment's notice. Those Marines were pumped full of unit pride and individual valor, but we were systematically conditioned to impart violence with precision under extreme duress. But our training wasn't just an undeniable advantage. It also fed a massive blind spot. We never should have been at that nightclub in the first place, much less there drinking. That night, we let our ego dictate our actions, operating under the dangerous assumption that nothing and no one could pose a legitimate threat against us. Moments before the night exploded into savagery, I had just walked away from the bar with a fresh cocktail in my hand. Navigating back through the crowd, I found my 2 fellow fighters locked in a tense verbal standoff with a young Marine. He had stepped on my friend's shoe, It was the kind of trivial, alcohol-fueled nonsense that ends up ruining the life of many such a young man. Of course, I didn't have my Lems on because Lem sent me these, very kind of them, so that I could promote them on my YouTube channel. Code in the description below. Anyway, I stepped up to him and kindly advised him to apologize. The gentleman that I was at the time, I let him know that it was the correct thing to do in this situation. But he didn't apologize. He started getting belligerent, posturing. He wanted to fight, but he was waiting for something. I noticed his eyes kept darting past me, scanning the room. He wasn't looking for an exit. He was stalling, buying time. The second his friends got close, the posturing ended. This was the moment he was waiting for. He screamed out a challenge at the top of his lungs and lunged forward with a heavily telegraphed headbutt. I caught the side of his face right before he made contact and redirected his momentum into my teammate standing next to me, who just so happened to be a high-level BJJ practitioner. From here on out, we'll refer to this sparring partner of mine as Mr. BJJ Guy. He did exactly what BJJ guys do. He immediately took him down to the floor, put him in a full rear naked choke, which ultimately took not just that one Marine, but also Mr. BJJ Guy out of the fight. That left it to me and my other teammate, who we will call Mr. Muscles, since he was jacked, to handle the rest of the platoon of Marines that had now swarmed us. Worse still was that as I was dealing with the headbutt, I took a blind sucker punch to the back of my head from a second attacker. From there, my training kicked in. My response was the pure, calm muscle memory of a martial artist in a self-defense situation. My movements became almost involuntary, choreographed. It was one of those moments in life that, when looking back, seems like something from a movie. Had Chopin's Moonlight Sonata been drifting through the loudspeakers instead of whatever hip-hop was reverberating across the dance floor, it would have been a far better soundtrack for the beautiful, calculated chaos that followed. Because I wasn't getting jiggy with it or bumping and grinding. No. I had just been full-on cold-cocked by a Marine, running across the bar to sucker punch me from behind. My first move? It was nothing Bruce Lee-esque. After getting waylaid in the back of the head, I didn't automatically fly in any complex Jeet Kune Do tactic that Sensei Mike had taught me. In reality, my immediate action was much more of a drunken stagger. Instinctively, I went limp as I shifted my weight so that I could be lighter on my feet. The stars I was seeing were standard operating procedure for me at the time, whether teeing off against 300-pounders on the line of scrimmage back at the university or in the ring against a heavyweight opponent when I used to fight for Sensei Mike. This wasn't my first rodeo. I slid my left foot back and around. I didn't pick it up, I slid it, keeping my balance, making sure I had both feet on the ground, while pushing off my right toe. My hands came up, knees slightly bent, and I was fighting to stay on my feet while spinning to face my attacker. As my vision began to clear and my attackers came into my view, my subconscious mind calculated a sequence of strikes. The closest Marine to me was actually the one who had just hit me, and he was already swinging another punch. While trying to regain my balance, I ducked low and to the left, away from his incoming fist, while punching essentially what was a straight right to his face. But there was a problem. Since I had just come back from the bar, I still had my cocktail in my hand. He hadn't asked me nicely if I wanted to step outside. This was no gentleman's duel, not a fair fight. Instead, he had blindsided me, and I was at a loss. I was now being attacked by more Marines than I could count, and I fought until my life was no longer in danger. Since at that moment he was already about to land his follow-up punch, that quick straight right to the face was all I had time for. Under other circumstances, it might have been enough to make him think twice. In a perfect world, maybe I could have even handled the situation without almost killing him. But as things were, I didn't have time to drop the glass in my hand, and that glass changed everything. The straight right connected, and the glass shattered as I barely missed the next incoming punch. I had thrown that first strike only to create separation and allow me to duck his follow-up punch. Since I was taken completely off guard, I wasn't even yet in a really good fighting stance like I wanted to be. I was more squared up than I would have liked to have been, and so the right I threw, it wasn't a true right cross. It was a quick off-balance strike I threw with my right hand, since my right hand was what was closest to him, and I had to hit him before he hit me again. In my mind, as a trained fighter, it was just a setup punch for a combo. There really wasn't even much power behind it. So I was already throwing a left jab and a hard right cross by the time I realized he was already going down hard. When I connected with the jab, which was the second punch, I noticed the blood. You have to realize this is all happening in seconds. So it was a straight right while I was regaining my balance, a left jab as I shifted into position, and a nice follow-up right cross. But by the time I followed up with that right cross, the impact splattered blood all over both of us, and he really just went down. Of course, unthinking that I had the glass in my hand, I didn't consider that it would cut both him and myself, but it did. In fact, I still have a scar here that you can see on my hand where the piece of that glass went in. This other scar here's something different. Different story for a different day. I got my hand cut, but it had left him with parts of his face hanging off and blood pouring onto the floor. Yet still, these were Marines. They weren't about to quit just because one of their friends was bleeding out. And the next one, big and burly, I was about 265 at the time. He probably had 20 pounds on me. Was halfway in to what was probably his signature move, an overhand haymaker. He was giving it his everything. Seeing his comrade go down, he wanted to make this count. Fortunately for me, the straight right jab cross combo I had just thrown now had me in a good fighting stance. He was already too close for me to throw a traditional combo, so I ducked low again and caught him with a body shot to the liver. He winced in pain as his punch grazed my forehead. I followed up with a nice Muay Thai right elbow. So it was a drop, boom, liver shot. As I came back up over the top, just threw that right elbow. Again, he was really too close for me to throw any kind of nice combos, and unfortunately, couldn't even get into any kicks at that point. The elbow found its mark, and he went down with a thud. Interestingly enough, his head was also cut just from the elbow. But so many times being popped by the mitts with Sensei Mike during training had taught me to keep my hands up between blows. So the punches that were raining in on us from his fellow brothers connected mostly with my open hands on the side of my face. By now, the room was in absolute chaos. Mr. Headbutt was still on the ground, being dominated by Mr. BJJ, and Mr. Muscles was punching it out with some of the other Marines who were now beginning to learn a hard lesson. I incapacitated a few more attackers in my immediate vicinity before I felt someone grab me from behind in a bear hug. Instinct took over again, and I drove him backwards into a column that was nearby. I reached back, shifted my weight, and slammed him to the ground with a makeshift judo toss. It turned out to be one of the bouncers. Unfortunately, his pride got the better of him, and later on, he lied and said that I was going around smashing people with a beer bottle since he was upset about me having slammed him. The police didn't take my statement. In fact, I never once talked to him. Just several months later, an arrest warrant went out for me, and I had to leave spring training of the next year to go back and turn myself in to the Manatee County Jail yet again. Thank God the charges were eventually dropped, but they really were wanting a conviction for this clearly self-defense situation. I was the only one arrested, and they gave it their all. Another bouncer who actually knew me rushed up at that moment. He threw his hands in the air and called me by my name, Greg, 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 to break the tension. I told him, hey man, I'm leaving. I'm out of here. I walked out the back door amongst a throng of scantily clad women in Santa hats, running and screaming at the sight of all the blood and violence. But the damage, as you can probably tell, was already done. The probable cause affidavit describes the statement of Mr. BJJ guy as saying that while I was on the ground, he was showered with broken glass. Page 7 also notes that the victim was bleeding profusely and that an employee discovered my discarded shirt in the back parking lot with a large amount of blood on several locations throughout the shirt. That single reactionary strike with the glass I happened to have in my hand turned a fistfight into a life-altering medical emergency for that Marine. It also serves as a real-world case study for the physics of force multipliers and the severe structural limitations of the human body. The reality is that a bare fist is simply not designed for striking. Most men think they can just throw a bare-knuckle punch in a street fight without consequence. It takes extreme training and a very high level of skill to be able to properly throw a bare-knuckle punch in a fight. Apart from all the other dynamics of throwing the punch, which I've got tons of videos on how to throw a punch here if you're interested, what most people get wrong is that it's essential to only use the first two knuckles, as the ring and pinky knuckles lack the structural strength to handle significant impact. From a biomechanical standpoint, The human hand is incredibly fragile. When you strike a hard surface, like the front of a skull, with an unsupported fist, the kinetic energy rebounds straight back through the small bones of your hand known as the metacarpals. The lateral shear stress can easily collapse the fourth and fifth metacarpals, causing what trauma surgeons commonly refer to as a boxer's fracture. That is exactly why professional fighters wrap their hands before fighting, before training, and even before hitting a heavy bag. They are binding those fragile bones together to create a rigid structure capable of absorbing the extreme shock that occurs when someone who knows how to fight lands a heavy punch. In everyday life, you don't have time to wrap your hands. And having that cocktail glass in my hand drastically changed the dynamic of that fight. The glass acted as an improvised force multiplier that ended the threat in seconds. But had I had time to drop the glass and run without further endangering my life, I most definitely would have. I learned that an improvised force multiplier can be a dangerous, uncontrolled variable. The glass shattered on impact, cutting my own hand and inflicting a level of catastrophic damage to the attacker that I never intended. The lesson that I learned from that bar fight is why the tactical bone breaker exists today. Its true genius lies in the science of structural integrity and impact transfer. In physics, pressure equals force divided by area. In other words, a smaller striking surface increases the pressure at the point of impact. When you take the entire kinetic weight and velocity of a strike and concentrate it down to the engineered ridges and crests on this tool, you drastically reduce the surface area of the impact. By driving that force through a narrow focus point, the tool can increase the impact pressure by up to 800%. That's changing a punch to the equivalent of a hit by a Major League Baseball player with a baseball bat. Simultaneously, the geometry of the tool acts as a structural bridge for your hand. Inside a closed fist, it supports the metacarpal bones and transfers the shock wave of the impact back into the meat of your palm, rather than letting it reverberate back into your fragile knuckles. It strengthens the small bones of the hand, providing the rigid support of a professional fighter's wrap in a fraction of the time. But a tool is only effective if you have it on you when you need it. Because the bone breaker is functionally a pocket legal keychain and a bottle opener, it can go virtually anywhere you go, bypassing the restrictions of a non-permissive environment. Because of that exact force multiplication science, I need to be perfectly clear. Please do not ever use this as a weapon, because if you do, it would be absolutely devastating. The amount of trauma these concentrated ridges and crests would inflict is far too severe to use against a human being. I designed these specific impact points to function exclusively as an emergency glass breaker. We have actual glass breaker inserts that we sell separately. I don't have any with me because I just restocked them. This is the cigar punch, so we have those as well. But if your vehicle goes off the road into a lake, or you're trapped behind automotive safety glass in a crisis, that concentrated impact transfer will help you shadow a window and let you escape. Surviving that night for me was not a victory. It was a catastrophic failure of judgment, fueled entirely by my pride. Looking back at the 24-year-old kid standing at that bar, I realize now what the book of Proverbs means when it tells us that pride goes before destruction. True wisdom would have meant never walking into that packed, alcohol-fueled environment in the first place. And failing that, being a wise man would have meant having the humility to simply de-escalate the situation or run away before the first punch was ever thrown. Today, my faith as a Christian doesn't make me passive, but it does give me the discernment to avoid the battlefield of ego entirely. Because the hard truth is this: if you cannot govern your own pride, no tool, no martial art, and no amount of training is going to save you from the permanent consequences of your own ego. True strength isn't winning a bar fight. It's having the humility to walk out the front door before the glass ever shatters. I'll leave links to the bone breakers and kinetic bottle openers. They all have different names. I'll leave those links and all of the accessories for today down in the description below. If you appreciate these hard truths and real-world breakdowns, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you actually get notified when the next video drops. Stay safe, stay vigilant, and put your faith in God, because He won't let you down. Thanks for watching. Bone out.